Welcome all to this exciting session today on digital airspace, unlocking business opportunities in the skies. If you look at the aviation industry, there's a tremendous transformation happening in aviation because of the emergence of new types of aircrafts. For example, the unmanned air vehicles, drones, air taxis. And that is creating a huge demand for critical connectivity up in the skies. And that's where the role of digital airspace is. So what is digital airspace? It's a convergence of telecom and aviation to address some of the needs up in the skies. So today on this panel, we're going to discuss some of the mission critical use cases in public safety and defense. We'll try to understand the needs of the drones up in the skies, the challenges, and how 3GPP technologies like 5G can address those challenges. And I'm also very delightful to have an absolutely esteemed thought leadership on the panel today from FirstNet Authority, GSMA, Saab, and Ericsson, who we are going to discuss more about these challenges and thought leadership there. Glad to have you all here.
Thank you. Thank you.
May I request the panelists to briefly introduce themselves and also share what aspect of your respective organizations are involved in digital airspace?
Sure thing.
Starting with you, Jeff.
Yeah, so my name is Jeff Bratcher. I'm the Chief Network and Technology Officer at the First Responder Network Authority in the United States. For those that aren't aware, legislation was created in 2012 that created the FirstNet Authority to build a nationwide public safety broadband network. In 2017, we awarded the contract to AT&T as our contract partner. And since 2017, we are now up to almost 7 million connections on our network in the United States. Largest private network. It's the fifth largest wireless network in the United States now, all dedicated to public safety communications. For the drone aspect, we've seen a lot of use by public safety in the United States with drones. They are very forward-leaning on anything that can help save lives and protect property. So they've been using drones for quite a while now, and we're seeing more use cases for them, because it's really about what is the sensor on the drone that's providing the situational awareness. And that's critical for public safety, responding to events, getting that awareness of what they're walking into, whether it's a wildland fire or a traffic stop on the street. So we're really excited with the progress of using drones in public safety. And I've got a few more updates on how we're using it on the FirstNet network as we go along. Thank you, Kapil, for having me.
Thank you. Alex?
So I'm Alex Sinclair, and I'm the CTO of the GSMA. Clearly our role is more one of support. Our primary goal really is ensuring interoperability with networks, whether they're underground in a mine, whether at street level or non-terrestrial. One of our current focuses is on exposing advanced network capabilities through APIs, standard APIs. We use the Linux Foundation Camara repository for that. We've got a bunch of APIs that are already of interest to drone companies, things like quality on demand, positioning, etc. But also together with drone companies, we've developed some new ones. So positioning, for example, and a really intriguing one around population density under the flight path to reduce risk. We also have our GSMA Innovation Foundry, where we've done a bunch of UAV projects. For example, a wide range from, believe it or not, indoor stock taking in Madrid, outdoor security surveillance, ports in, I think, here in Barcelona, Antwerp, and Bristol. And even together with Ericsson, we've done some interesting commercial field testing in the US with the 3 US operators. And we were using the Ericsson device analytics platform as well. So quite a lot going on.
Thank you, Alex. Christian?
Hello, so my name is Christian Hedelin. I'm head of strategy for Saab Group, a defense and security company. It's great to be back in Barcelona, I must say.
When was the last time?
2018 last time, so 7 years since leaving the exciting telco business, getting into defense and security. And I must say, I mean, the geopolitical trends and the tragic development we see globally, of course, puts defense and security at center stage. And within that, it's also super important to improve the capabilities of connectivity, both for mission-critical communication, tactical bubbles, for national security, public safety, but also the ability to operate manned and unmanned platforms in a mixed air environment without too heavy legislation, or I would say to operate them safely. I mean, our company has a vision of keeping people and society safe, and we are developing products and platforms in all the physical domains, and we are developing platform for cybersecurity as well as some payloads in space. So we are pretty much all over the place, but one thing that is very important, that is why I think we can do a lot more jointly between the defense and security industry, between authorities as well as the defense and security or the telco industry, is the importance of improving connectivity, secure data exchange, and operational picture sharing. And I will share some of those ideas, including what we are doing together with Ericsson actually in some of these fields at an early stage today.
Thank you, Christian. Erik?
Thank you, Kapil. Erik Ekudden, CTO of Ericsson. Digital airspace is something we've been working with for quite many years now, I think. We'll come back to what is holding us back, but I think it's clear that it has matured all around the world, what we're doing in the US, what we're doing in Europe, Middle East. There is a lot of excitement, partly because it can solve real problems in the civilian space, in the mission-critical space, and of course in the defense space, as Christian was into. But I think that it's already now clear that when we are using 5G for low altitude, for medium altitude, we get really good results. And I think that's something that we want to leverage. We have a technology, we have a platform that with very small changes can actually serve big needs. Sensing, of course, collecting data, but also goods transport, and then of course beyond that with people transport. So we're very excited. We see it as a business opportunity for the whole industry. In fact, it's one of those capabilities that go beyond connectivity when we think about 5G as this innovation platform, the mobile platform that extends beyond transporting bits. And I think some of us were already mentioning, not the least Alex here, how important it is to make this available to developers over network API. So out here, of course, we are showing what we're doing with other operator partners on Aduna. You mentioned some great APIs. I hope we can come back to them in this session because they are really here and now, enabling some of this business to take off. But that's how we look at it. It's kind of a full stack solution, starting with 5G, of course, in low altitude and pointing upwards with the antennas, even up to 3,000 meters. And I think that's possible already now.
Thank you, Erik. Yeah. But let's try to get deeper into the challenges faced and how these are addressed with 5G. We start with you, Jeff. Thanks for sharing about FirstNet. And of course, FirstNet is heavily involved in mission-critical operations, saving lives, and having a very positive societal impact. So in your view, especially coming from US, which is a thriving economy, what's your view of the drone, maturity of the drone ecosystem? And also, what expectations and needs would you have on the ecosystem to support you?
Yeah, so there's two aspects. Using drones without having network connectivity with an operator. Public safety's been doing that for quite a few years now. And again, putting whether it's recording, getting live video, thermal imaging, finding people that are lost in woodland areas are some examples. It's progressing quickly for the use in public safety. I took some data from the Chula Vista Police Department. I thought this was a good data point out in San Diego, California. They have programs called drones as first responders now. So instead of sending a first responder, you have flying first responders is what we're calling them. And they have set up drone stations across the city. And they have, out of their 21,000 calls for service responded to, in using drones, 4,400 of those calls did not require an officer to go out. So they're able to get that situational awareness with the drone, find out what's happening on the scene, and then have the public safety officers focused on other activities. So it's reducing some of the non-urgent calls for service that take away from the police officers. Brookhaven PD is another one in Georgia. They have and these are all online. You can see their YouTube videos as well and how they're using drones. The drone typical response time in Brookhaven is 2 minutes now. So they have drones set up, they can go to a situation, see what's happening, and get that stream or video or information flowing to the officer that's responding to the event. And again, they have much better awareness of what's happening within the incident as they arrive. As far as the ecosystem on drones, so Archer is one of the big drone usages in the United States for public safety. And those are really delivering transport payloads of blood, Narcan, some of those medical supplies that are needed, and they can use drones to get those to incidents quickly. The other one we just recently announced for the FirstNet network specifically is Skydio. The X10 drone is now network connected on the FirstNet network and certified using our band 14 spectrum. We'll talk about some of the beyond visual line of sight implications that might have as they're connected on the cellular network. And also, Kapil, as you know, some of the design mechanisms you have to put in place for something up in the air versus what terrestrial networks are used to being on the ground. So we're excited about the ecosystem. I think it's going to really start taking off as we see more and more network connected drones as well.
Thank you, Jeff. In fact, you work, of course, very closely with AT&T, and AT&T is also going forward to the very expandable high-performance networks. Do you see any reflections in terms of how mobile networks like AT&T can support you in some of these requirements that you have?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, Brian Hobson, sitting in the back of the room there, leads our innovation team. We did some testing with AT&T and Ericsson equipment, I believe, in North Dallas on some of the impacts of using aerial platforms, whether it's drones or helicopters, and what some of the network impacts would be there. So yeah, they're fully supportive and working in this space as well.
Thank you. So in your view, what are the initiatives that GSMA is taking now that can support the challenges that Jeff also mentioned?
So convening is a major part of our job. I mean, obviously convening our own industry. We're sitting in Barcelona with 100,000 close friends, and that's quite normal. But we've been working with aviation industry for quite some time. We set up a drone interest group, I think in 2016, and the last time I checked, Ericsson Digital Airspace was one of the co-chairs. They've done some interesting work. I think they published a work last year on drone business service models, and that's quite interesting. I mean, basically what we're trying to do is to convince both sides of the equation that the business that Erik was talking about actually exists, and it's something you can do now. So we work with our operator partners to show them what they can do, and then we try and demonstrate the capabilities to the other side. We also set up an activity called the Aerial Connectivity Joint Activity. We're not very good at marketing, you can see that.
Yeah.
But that was together with the Global UTM Association, GUTMA.
Yep.
And we also work, because it's really important to work with authorities as well. So we work with people like EASA in Europe, FAA in the US, the International Civil Aviation Organization as well. So basically we're trying to convene all the necessary stakeholders and show them the art of the possible. Because as Erik said, this is not, people think this is the future. This is not autonomous vehicles. You don't have to wait 5 or 10 years for this to be happening right now. I mean, Jeff already mentioned a bunch of use cases. And by the way, one of ours is with Skydio as well, which is a bit spooky. But one of our case studies on the Foundry is as well. We've been demonstrating what you can do now. And I think it's really important that people realize that. In fact, I think the major barrier right now is that I think our regulatory friends need to play catch up a little bit. They've done a lot of good work, don't get me wrong, but they're not quite there yet where this kind of service can reach scale, I would say.
Saab is very much into mission critical operations, especially defense.
Yes.
So please share some of your challenges and priorities, and what do you look forward to the mobile operators supporting that?
Tactical bubbles, allowing armed forces to share information seamlessly with high bandwidth, low latency, is absolutely vital. We have seen that from the war in Ukraine. And the existing NATO links is not up to standard. They are 2G. They are kilobit in bandwidth rather than hundreds of megabit that the sensor networks, everything from satellite sensors to ground sensors, actually produce. So allowing, and that is not the technology innovation more or less, that is the adoption of things that you're doing great in the telco space with authorities within the national security authorities across the NATO countries. So here I think it's more about joining forces together with the technology opportunities that could actually create that mobile tactical bubbles that are needed everywhere from disaster relief to command and control stations to smart air bases. The other thing, equally important, is the connectivity between domains. So connecting sea, air, land, satellite and cyber is also a very important part, and not doing that between domains, but also between nations. And that requires secure connectivity and a clever way of distributing the right information to the right end user. And that also exists already today in 4G networks and 5G networks. So I think those two use cases already here, they're evident, and we can do a lot more jointly on those areas. And we are doing a lot, but we can do accelerate that. When it comes to the digital airspace, I mean, Saab has a public safety branch also, representing roughly 10% of us. So we are 90% on the defense side and 10% on the civil security. And we are, at the moment, delivering air traffic management software to 18 out of 20 largest airports. And my insight into that is that the regulatory domain within the federal aviation authorities across the world are quite traditional, to be not too pushy here, and it's quite silo-based. And one example of that is that we have developed remote tower solutions, which allows not manned air traffic management, but also having cameras instead, and actually a fiber connection to a remote control station where you can actually operate several airports. But only to get that accredited and certified 10 years. And we can't afford having 10 years for unmanned traffic management. So I think we need to work very jointly with the authorities, the right authorities, both public safety and national security authorities and aviation authorities, to unlock what I believe to a large extent already exists technology-wise. And when it comes to then the digital airspace, we see plenty of very interesting use cases. And I think the investment and the business case in that type of infrastructure most likely starts with public safety and national security use cases. That is building the infrastructure that later on can have a plethora of new applications built on that infrastructure. It needs to be network connected. And not only that, I think the sensing part is also important, because not only do you need to understand on how to do dynamic route allocation in the airspace, but you also need to have control over the non-collaborative, non-network connected drones that may or may not be there. So that part is actually a very important part to what I see likely get the approval from aviation authorities to allow beyond visuals line of sight operations in peacetime. Because in wartime we see a lot of drones, but then it's war. That we don't want. So we need to be able to operate these drones in mixed air domain during peacetime, and that has both significant, as we heard Jeff say, improved response time of first responders. It has significant better territorial integrity of border control connection, search and rescue. But in order to make that happen, we need to jointly work with the authorities to get the regulations in a modern shape.
How Ericsson could support, and of course you've been a harbinger of digital airspace at Ericsson for quite some time. How can we address some of these issues?
I think the starting point for us has from the beginning been to work with industries, working with AT&T, working with FirstNet, working with mission-critical public safety, where it's obvious that this is giving value already today. So I think the examples are great. We are a big supporter, both as a provider, but also making networks more fit for this purpose. Programmable, open networks that can be directed to set up, for example, dynamic slices for beyond visual line of sight. Those kind of capabilities are now commercialized. They are on display here, so we don't look at them as proof of concepts any longer. Across industry sectors, these capabilities are available and should be used also in public safety. Defense is another area. Ericsson has been public since some time about our ambitions in that area. Ericsson's Federal Technology Group, based out of US, is one example of moving in that direction. We're also engaging with defense here in Europe. But I think that there may be more to do on that side. I think I think the requirements are different. But if we start with the public safety, the mission critical, and really get that going, I think we are on a good track. When it comes to medium altitude, we already early started to show what you can do connecting drones and ambulance helicopters, for example, with 5G systems in Sweden. We did that together with one of the operators, Terracom there. And this is truly not rocket science. Of course, you need to be careful because it's a very different situation when you're starting to point antennas upwards. But the good learnings from that gives us confidence that this is also commercially available, if not now, within very short. And then to the point that I think Alex made earlier, and is so important, is that there are a lot of these capabilities that are beyond the connectivity. It starts with connectivity, but it goes into 3D positioning, which we are showing. It goes into advanced population density knowledge. I think some of those search and rescue areas, they could be so enhanced when you know how many are in the area under an evacuation. Is it 100 people that are still around there? How do I make sure that I get them out? Things like that are now on the roadmap for network APIs with the Aduna venture that we're showing outside here. So then you start to get new capabilities that are integrated into the right sort of commercial or the right applications. And there we're working with a number of operators. TDC is one that comes to mind, but also Vodafone and Telia to showcase some of these things. So again, a lot has happened. The technology doesn't seem to be the point that is holding us up. We do have a lot more to do there to put it together into these solutions with guaranteed quality, communication, network APIs, and so forth. But clearly, the bigger challenges are on the other side, on the regulatory side, and getting comfort with this.
Yeah, I think I just want to comment and support Erik's view that there will be no perfect solution. So I think it's important to start staging sort of minimum viable functionality in different stages. So you could operate beyond visual line of sight safely if you are over a coastal area, for instance, or over areas where you have control over what is under the drone. Because I think we should not complicate things too much. 90% plus of the technologies that have been developed by yourselves at Ericsson and together with operators already allow for these first steps to be made. And then we need, of course, to engage with the right authorities to do that, and then have a roadmap on how we can improve that type of application, because otherwise we will have sort of chasing a ghost of a perfect solution. And that I fully support your view there, Erik, that we should start now and build.
In your view, what's your roadmap for drones and how ecosystem partners can help you?
So we definitely are driven by public safety and their use cases. Public safety, if you're not familiar, they are very creative. They will adopt and use technologies to fill gaps that you may not have thought of, drones being one of them. Very early on, even as far back as 10 years ago, using some of the just commercial drones that were coming onto market. Now we're seeing use cases where the drone is up real time using this live 911 feed, so you have audio all the way through from the drone and the citizen to the officer that's responding to an event. So we're seeing use cases like that. Again, back to that situational awareness. The safer the first responder can be, as well as protecting the citizens in whatever the event is better for everyone. So they're really pushing the envelope on this and wanting to use more of this. Public safety in the United States, whether it's police, fire, EMS, they're having a hard time attracting resources and people to work in these critical fields. So any force multiplier that can be used, such as drones, reducing response time, and having them focused on the more critical public safety operations is going to be very helpful for them, especially as they're trying to attract more people into the field. A lot of the thermal imaging and finding, lost children in the wilderness or lost hikers has been another big one in the roadmap. And I think we'll see additional sensors and capabilities, artificial intelligence, recognizing crowd scenes and other threats as well is what we see in the roadmap coming as well.
I think I mentioned a bunch earlier on. I mean, the problem we're basically trying to solve is scale. Because at the moment, I could give you probably 50 use cases that we've got already, and the rest of the people on the panel could do more. But we know this from our industry. You've got to get out of what I would call POC hell, where it's just yet another POC. And the way to do that is to represent scale, even if it's smaller to begin with, so that people start to believe it. Because, for example, if I look at my constituency, the operators, what the drone aviation companies want is, for what Erik mentioned, they want the towers to tilt in the right direction. Now, to do that, you've got to make an investment case. To make the investment case, you've got to believe that the demand side is there. So by partnering with the other companies, we're starting to show them what we can do to help them. And in turn, they're showing the kind of demand. So I was sitting on a panel in Amsterdam a couple of years ago, and I felt like I was being outgunned. Every single member of the panel was saying, why aren't operators making this available to us now? And the simple answer was because they've got a lot of priorities. They need to prioritize, and that means they need to see business. Yep. So one problem we have as technologists is that sometimes we only talk technology. You've got to remember that one piece of the puzzle is that somebody has to make money, right? So if you can show the operators that there's enough demand, and if you can show the drone companies that we can actually meet the supply, then people will start, I think, to launch the first commercial services, providing, again, that they have the necessary regulatory approvals. And Erik can tell you as well, if there's one thing we know in our industry, is that scale really, really matters. That's how you get the level of innovation and pace, and that's frankly how you get the cost down. And that's something, sadly, that we don't really see in the defense sector, and we don't see in the public safety so much, because they don't get the necessary scale.
Right.
So I think trying to crack some of the problems in the commercial world will ultimately benefit everybody.
Can I check with you there, Alex? Because when we have worked with this, of course, there are so many use cases available, but they don't require exactly the same thing from the networks.
True.
I mean, drone corridors, palisades, firefighting, some other things we've talked about. They have some different impact on the network. Are you discussing among your constituents, the operators, how to sort of dynamically or in a flexible way handle that? Because if we'd have to build everything out to sort of make the business case fly, then that's a showstopper itself. Or how are you thinking around that?
I don't think, certainly in the discussions that I know, Barbara on my team would know better. I don't think we've really got to the stage where we have to figure out how we would manage this plethora of different use cases effectively and the kind of tools that we would need to do it. On the other hand, I would say, I suspect we have the tools to do it. It would just
at
require
least partly. I think the dynamicity is a critical thing here, but I think that at least if you can sort of segment it a little bit, I think we have all the tools we need.
Yeah.
And if I may comment, as I said earlier, I truly believe that the technology is already here. I do think that the regulation and authority applications is the primary challenge to make this fly quickly. And I think that the public safety use cases are probably the most likely ones to be the starting point of such an infrastructure, because that is about first responder reaction, it's about territorial integrity, etc. And that goes from another part of the government budget than perhaps commercial operations like drone logistics or something. That will always be subscale until the infrastructure is there. Then you will get scalability on top of that. But I also want to reflect on partnerships. I mean, Saab as a company is basically built on partnerships, both technology partnerships, market partnerships, and authority partners with authorities. And one success case, even if it took 10 years, as I mentioned earlier, is that in order to navigate the air traffic management innovation on allowing remote air traffic management control through remote towers, which now is the default standard when you build any small or larger airport, you will have camera towers to complement man towers in order to get improved capacity of the airport reduction of cost per landing, shorter distances between the air separation, and also to the point that was mentioned by Jeff, it's actually for the air traffic control authorities easier to recruit people if you can allow them a cozy downtown office instead of going 40, 50 kilometers or miles outside and sitting on the airport side. So what we did with Swedish Air Authority, Luftfartsverket, Aviation Authority, was to create a joint venture called SDATS, Saab Digital Air Traffic Solutions, with a 50% ownership. That made a skin in the game by the Aviation Authority and a skin in the game by us as a commercial company. So both teams were really incentivized to make this work, regulatory-wise, technology-wise.
Alex made a great point, especially what we've learned in doing some of the testing, as I mentioned earlier, on using drones that are network connected. Designing a network for a device 3 meters off the ground is typical what US Cellular and what our network in the United States is designed for. You start putting flying user equipment above the towers, the systems behave differently, and there's a lot of optimization. I think, Alex, to your point, how do you, and I know, Kapil, you're working in this space with Ericsson, how do you design the networks to be able to support the non-traditional design structure of a mobile 3 feet off the ground terrestrially? So we do see some impacts. Our testing showed some of those concerns. As it gets up there, it sees sites from all over that may not be the best serving site for the signal connecting the drone to that.
Thank you, Jeff. In fact, that's what maybe, Erik, you could also include our work on massive MIMO beamforming. I think that's something.
Yeah, I think you both covered it very well. The fact that, yes, massive MIMO is more directional. You need to do the testing, and yes, you need to point upwards. 300 meters is much more than 3 meters, absolutely, yeah. But I think they're not simple things, but they are manageable things, because it's with the engineering community. Then you have certain trade-offs. That's back to Alex's point. How much of the capacity, how much and how dynamic do you need to do this? But you absolutely need to be able to know how it will work. So I think that's that work we're doing. But that's more on the network and the massive MIMO side. I think there's also a lot of work, as you also pointed out, Kapil, here, when it comes to the ecosystem, because yes, we have, 100 plus partners here in our little booth. We're all about partnerships, for sure, also in the drone space, so we're not intending to build any drones, but Skydio, I think, is a great partner. Yeah. And you have this air taxi Whisk example, but also the work that we can do. I mentioned a few of the operator partnerships, but it extends actually to all parts of the world where you have advanced 5G networks. So you could take India, where we're working with Geo. You have other pieces or parts here in Europe where we're working with that. And it's partly about testing and getting to know it, but it's partly also about building that comfort that it actually works, and this is how you're supposed to operate it. So partnerships, critically important, of course.
Absolutely.
I mean, Purdue is, I think they are relatively advanced in this space for various reasons. They have their own airstrip on the university, but it's also about looking at the industrial cases, looking at the advanced air mobility, the AIM space, and we are a proud partner of their program. I think you are there as well, Saab, but there is 10 others as well. So it's a group, consortium that is really working on these topics. I think we will see a lot of good things coming out of that, because it's under sort of the good supervision of Purdue here, but it's also very forward-leaning, and I think that's exactly what we need to do. So, yeah, good example from US.
I can comment there also. I mean, we are heavily involved in research collaboration with Purdue University. It's also adjacent to our T7 fighter trainer factory, which we are building together with Boeing for the future fighter trainer aircraft T7 for US Air Force. And it's a perfect environment to be in, both in the airspace, I would say. You have one of the largest campus and research universities in that part of US, and you have also advanced drone research around that. So both for manned aviation as well as unmanned aviation is a perfect spot, and we have our joint 5G research centered around that university, West Lafayette.
So if you have to pick one or two key takeaways in terms of what we really need to do, what could that be?
From my perspective, public safety is using them. They're going to keep using them. They want to see better capabilities, and once they can connect them through the networks, and like the FirstNet network that gives them that quality of service, priority, and preemption at all times on the feeds coming from the drones. I think it's critical we start understanding how we can design the networks to support those for those critical data streams, whatever they may be, whether it's thermal imaging, video, situational awareness. That's one of the key things we will be looking at on the FirstNet network, and how to support those use cases in the sky now with the drones as first responders, and what's the capability from that. But not neglecting the impacts to other, firefighting situations. I mentioned the collision with the tanker and other things. So the avoidance capabilities and leveraging those capabilities not to have that impact the situation.
Thank you, Jeff. Alex?
Well, I would hope, first of all, that you realize that we are really trying to do a lot for the ecosystem, digital airspace ecosystem. As I say, we see our job as basically promotion as well, because we want to sort of foster scale. We've got 700 mobile operators, and quite a lot of them are interested in this, and Erik's named a few countries, but Korea, Japan as well. They're looking at doing eVTOL stuff possibly this year.
Yeah.
But again, for us, we know we've got to solve the commercial problem, which is show enough business. It doesn't have to be fully scaled out. Show enough business interest to get some of our operator members moving in partnership with the drone companies. Because although we're often criticized for not being very good at being the first mover, actually operators are pretty good at being followers. And once they see a competitor or somebody else in a different country, frankly, making money, then that has quite a catalyzing effect. So we do see our role primarily to still be sort of trying to foster scale, try and find a couple of use cases that will generate revenue quite quickly, because operators unfortunately do also want to see a return in generally a shorter time frame than, say, Facebook. So solving that commercial problem is what will ultimately unlock this. But that's not an impossible challenge. We've done it with multiple technologies over the last 30 years, and I'm very hopeful that it will happen.
I just want to emphasize the need for joint innovation and being very pragmatic about finding the right steps in making this technology that to a large extent already exists into the right applications. I mean, we have done fantastic research joint work with Ericsson showing what 5G sensing can do with normal software upgrades, extending and detecting drones on kilometers. So technology is there, but how do we make the business model work, and how do we make the applications work jointly when we have authorities, operator side, telco side, defense industry, and armed forces? So I really want us to be innovative and pragmatic.
Thank you. Erik?
Innovative and pragmatic.
Yes.
Sounds like this industry. But I
that
think,
is the challenge.
I think Alex has a sort of a great point here, because it's just in front of us, and I think Jeff is making a good case. We fully support that, working with the public safety, the obvious starting point for us as well. Maybe we need a little bit of competition between countries here, something that makes it glaringly obvious that this is something that every country will need to safeguard. And public safety, obviously. Technology there needs to have an ecosystem. We will add things, as you said, Christian, making it even better to use a mobile network for communication, for positioning, for sensing. All of those things are really on the roadmap. So now it's for countries to step up and see kind of who is going to be left behind and who is going to be at the forefront here, because this is saving lives, of course, but it's also a big business opportunities for those that are in the forefront. So maybe finding ways to talk even more about the good examples where we are helping through partnerships and operators, deployments, even if it's not the full country, even if it's more of a sort of business case that is a little bit isolation, and then promote it. Just talk about it, make sure it becomes known to governments, and then we'll see who picks up. Because unfortunately, Alex, my experience is not that all governments will sort of get in line or be in lockstep here. It does depend on whether you have made the investment in a good 5G network to start with, because otherwise threshold is pretty high.
Yep.
So there are a few preconditions: building the best 5G network to start with, and a few other things on network programmability and APIs. When those are in place, I think governments can just sort of say, we want this. So a little bit more of that.
And some governments are.
And some governments are, but let's sort of bring them to the forefront. We should have them up here as well, so they talk about how they are capturing this opportunity.